Mark finished his day at the elementary school, where he had been teaching for several years. It was a typical day, lessons, tests, helping kids with their homework. His way home always took him through the subway, where he liked to read a book or listen to music to relax a bit before the evening. This time there were more people on the platform than usual. Mark stood aside while the crowd hurried in different directions. Suddenly his attention was drawn to an elderly woman who was trying to pick up a heavy bag that had fallen at her feet. She looked exhausted and looked around helplessly for help. Mark did not hesitate to approach. He knelt down, picked up the bag, and asked gently, "Let me help you." The woman smiled with relief, and her eyes shone with gratitude. She explained that she was returning home after a long day and had not expected the journey to be so difficult. Mark not only helped her carry her bag to the nearest exit, but also made sure she was okay before returning to the platform. After a brief but sincere thank you, the woman disappeared into the crowd. Mark felt an inner satisfaction that he had helped. For him, it was a simple gesture, but for the woman, as he did not know at the time, it was of great importance. As the train pulled up to the platform, Mark could feel that this evening was going to be special for him, even if he didn't understand why. Mark got home a little later than usual. Helping the woman in the subway was a natural thing for him to do, but it took longer than he had planned. Leaving his jacket on the coat rack, he looked at his watch and realized that he had already missed a meeting with a friend with whom he had planned to discuss the possibility of teaching at another school. His friend, Alex, worked at a prestigious private school and had recommended Mark as a candidate for a teaching position. The opportunity could have been a career-changing one, but the meeting was important to convince the school administration. Mark quickly wrote Alex an apology and explained the reason for the delay. He hoped it would not have serious consequences. The next day, Mark came to work as usual. His school, though modest, was his second home. Here he knew every student and saw how even the weakest children made progress. But this time the mood was different. He received a message from the administration that his class teacher had decided to revise his workload because the school was having financial difficulties. This meant that he could lose a few hours of work and, consequently, part of his salary. Mark tried to stay calm, but inside he could feel the stress starting to set in. The opportunity to work at the new school would have been a solution to his problems, but now he was not sure if he could convince them to give him a chance after missing the first meeting. After work, Mark decided to call Alex. He explained everything that had happened, but Alex wasn't sure if he could reschedule. "That was an important opportunity, Mark," he said. "The administration likes to see initiative, and now I have to convince them that you're still interested." Mark felt guilty, but at the same time he realized that he could not have done otherwise. He could not pass by a person who needed help. However, now this choice was beginning to seem like the reason he was failing in his professional life. In the days that followed, the situation only got worse. At school, the administration decided to reduce the number of extracurricular activities, and this directly affected Mark. His hours were cut, which meant that he would be paid less. With this in mind, he began to think seriously about how to cope with financial difficulties. At the same time, his thoughts kept returning to the chance encounter in the subway. Over and over again, he imagined that woman's face, her grateful smile, her tired eyes. Although he never learned her name, he knew that he had done something important. It was like a reminder to him that every action matters, even if the result is not always obvious. Meanwhile, Mark began to notice that his social media post about simple acts of kindness was starting to get attention. A few days ago, he decided to share this story to remind people of the importance of helping each other. His words, "Even the smallest gesture can change someone's life," resonated with many people. People wrote comments, shared their stories, and thanked him for his inspiration. Even so, Mark felt an inner conflict. He asked himself, was my kindness really worth it if I am now facing such difficulties? He was convinced that he could not have done otherwise, but the anxiety over the missed opportunity and financial difficulties still remained. One evening, as Mark was sitting at his desk in his small apartment, he heard the doorbell ring. It was a courier with a small package. Inside the package, he found a note. "Dear Mark, your act of kindness has not gone unnoticed. You have inspired more people than you know. Thank you for showing us how important it is to remain human. Best regards, Robert Downey Jr." Along with the note was a gift, a rare book on education and leadership that Mark had wanted for a long time, but could not afford. He was stunned. Mark couldn't understand how his story had reached the actor, but now he felt that his choice had mattered. Although he didn't know how this event would affect his life, this gesture restored his faith. He realized that kindness is not just about what you get in return, but about how you change the world around you. The day after receiving the gift, Mark still couldn't believe that his act had caught the attention of someone as famous as Robert Downey Jr. However, he did not attach much importance to it, believing that it was just a gesture of gratitude, and that would be the end of it. His usual life went on. He went to work, taught classes, and socialized with his colleagues, although the difficulties with the reduction of hours at school still remained unresolved. Mark felt that he needed to look for new opportunities, but at the same time, he did not want to lose what he loved most, his students. A few days later, on his way home, he received an unexpected call from an unknown number. The man on the other end introduced himself as Robert Downey Jr.'s personal assistant. With calm confidence, he explained that the actor was impressed with Mark's story and wanted to meet him in person. This caused Mark to have mixed feelings: surprise, excitement, and even a little doubt. Why him? Why did this simple act of kindness attract so much attention? The meeting was scheduled in a cozy coffee shop near the city center. On the day of the meeting, Mark tried to look calm, but his excitement was overwhelming. Everything seemed unreal. From the thought that he was about to see a celebrity to the realization that his life had suddenly changed because of a chance event. When Robert walked into the coffee shop, it was a moment Mark couldn't forget. The actor looked simple, but his charisma filled the room. He greeted Mark in a warm and friendly manner, and then they sat down at a table in the corner. The conversation between them was quiet, but very informative. Robert explained that the woman Mark had helped in the subway was his mother. Her story about the incident moved him so much that he wanted to thank Mark personally. He told us how important it was for him to know that even in a hectic and often indifferent world, there are people who are willing to help unselfishly. Robert also recalled how he was inspired by Mark's post on social media, in which he encouraged people to do good deeds. It reminded the actor of the importance of humanity and mutual assistance. He wanted to know more about Mark, his life, and dreams. During the meeting, Robert came to the conclusion that Mark deserved support. He saw him not just as a teacher, but as a person who sincerely wants to change the lives of others for the better. The actor decided to help him realize his dream, which he may not have even fully articulated to himself. The meeting was a moment that will always remain in Mark's memory. He left the coffee shop with a new sense of possibility. His simple act of kindness not only resonated with a famous person, but also became the beginning of changes he could not have imagined. After meeting Robert Downey Jr., Mark's life began to change. A few days after the conversation, he received an email with details of a grant that the actor had decided to fund to help him realize his dream. Robert not only provided the funds, but also helped create a plan for their effective use. Mark had always dreamed of organizing a program to help children from low-income families. He saw many students at his school facing challenges that affected their learning and wanted to create an environment where these children could receive support, from extra lessons to psychological help. Thanks to Robert's generosity, this is now possible. A few weeks later, the project began. The school where Mark worked received new textbooks, modern classroom equipment, and even funding for extracurricular activities. One of the most important changes was the creation of a special fund that covered the cost of educational materials for children whose families could not afford them. Mark devoted every free minute to working on the program. He communicated with the students, learned about their needs, and worked with his colleagues to create the most comfortable learning environment possible. Students who had previously felt forgotten began to show progress. Their eyes shone with joy, and this was the greatest reward for Mark. Over time, other schools learned about the program. Mark was invited to share his experience at conferences and seminars. He spoke about the importance of supporting children, the power of kindness, and how one gesture can change not only one person, but an entire community. Robert stayed in touch. Although he did not interfere with the daily work, he closely followed the development of the program. One day, Mark received another letter from him in which the actor wrote how impressed he was with what Mark had done. He thanked him for taking the chance, not only for himself, but for others as well. Mark felt that his life was filled with new meaning. His kindness, which once seemed to him an ordinary act, had now become the basis for significant changes in the lives of many people. He no longer doubted that every gesture, even the smallest, has the power to affect the whole world. Several months have passed since Mark's project became a reality. His program to support children from low-income families has become an important resource for the community. Students who had previously struggled with learning difficulties now had access to quality materials, extracurricular activities, and the support they needed. Parents thanked Mark for giving their children a chance for a better future. The classrooms were filled with life. Children who had once been silent in class were now raising their hands and answering boldly. They discovered talents that had previously seemed unattainable due to limited resources. For Mark, this was the best reward, to see his work make a real difference. Local newspapers and even national publications began to write about Mark's initiative. He was invited for an interview where he told his story, how a chance meeting in the subway and a simple act of kindness changed his life. He emphasized that the most important thing is to act not for reward, but because it is the right thing to do. Robert Downey Jr. also remained a part of this story. One day, he personally visited the school to see the results of the project. His presence caused a wave of excitement among the students, but he made the biggest impression on Mark. Robert praised the teacher's work and shared that it inspired him to support other similar initiatives. The school has become not only a place of learning, but also a center for the entire community. People began to join the program by donating money and volunteering their time. Mark's idea became a living proof of how kindness and support can unite people. One evening, when Mark was finishing his workday, he went out to the schoolyard. The sun was setting over the horizon, painting the sky in golden hues. He stopped, looked at the school building, and felt deeply grateful. His life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. It all started with a simple act of helping an elderly woman, but that act became a chain reaction that touched dozens of lives. Mark realized that this was only the beginning. His work would continue, because now he knew that even the smallest action could change the world for the better. And every new day brought him faith that anything is possible.